Alright, let's see what's on today. Grown men playing with balls, grown men playing with sticks, grown men hitting their balls with a stick. Aha! Cars turning left. Ah, good old NASCAR. On Fox. Of all the things I thought I'd be complaining about in the year of our Lord 2024, I could not have predicted that the crux of NASCAR's public presence would be their coverage on TV. Not their taking down of the scoring pylons, not their shit-ass track rebrands, not even another batch of terrible calls by the officials, although admittedly those are still very annoying. No, it's the sport's bread and butter. The one thing that's given stock car racing more life over the past 50 years than anything else, TV. In particular, their coverage on Fox. Now don't get me wrong, there are still plenty of problems with the NBC side of things. Namely Jeff Burton and Steve Letarte constantly talking like this. And while Rick Allen does have a great voice, he doesn't tend to know what to do with it. But at least they actually sound like they want to be there. At least it's actually watchable. The same can't really be said for Fox, which really sucks because from 2001 to 2019, I'd say they provided some of the best quality NASCAR coverage of all time. Of the core NASCAR on Fox trio, Darrell Waltrip probably received the most scrutiny. But you know how they say you don't know what you had until it's gone? I think a lot of NASCAR fans realized that in 2020, the year that Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon were left to fend for themselves as Darrell drove off into the sunset. He might not have always had the right words, but when put up next to the iconic, well-composed, booming voice of Mike Joy, Waltrip's high-strung southern drawl added the perfect flavor. And that's not even to mention the hilarious yet well-informed perspectives of Larry McReynolds. To this day, Waltrip's the only one of the three to step away from broadcasting full-time, but when he stepped out of the booth 5 years ago, he took more than just himself. The commentary, the graphics, the overall production quality, it felt like everything was going downhill. It felt like with each passing year, NASCAR on Fox became more and more unrecognizable, until we wound up where we are now, with broadcasts so dreadful in quality that we might as well be back in the 80s. Not to shit on the 80s, they were integral to getting the sport to where it is now, but that is a low bar to surmount. So how'd we get here? What are the problems and how do we fix them? All of that and more on this episode of Connor Complains. When it comes to most sporting events, TV is really important. Besides the small subset of fans who crawl out of their hobbit holes to shell out and show up live, television broadcasts are the only way the majority of viewers will even see the race in the first place. This is why to motorsports, TV is everything. Whereas local sports teams will play in one set location for half of their season, NASCAR visits most of its tracks just once or twice a year. So when the circus comes to town, it's a pretty big deal. About 40 or 50,000 people descend on most NASCAR races, but with the large distance between the tracks comes different crowds each and every week. But you know what crowd doesn't change? The millions of people who watch from home. Since the first full race was broadcast back in 1979, loads of people from across the country and even the world have learned about and followed NASCAR by watching it on TV. The sanctioning body understood this, and so over the years they've put more and more effort into improving their production quality. Choreographed segments, flashier graphics, newsworthy reporting, NASCAR had it all. Which is why from the late 80s on through the 90s, I don't think there was ever a more interesting time for fans watching at home. But there was a slight issue. Up until the turn of the new millennium, track promoters would cut deals with local networks, putting the races on an ever-changing channel lineup. It got so bad that in 2000, NASCAR Cup races were broadcast on as many as 6 different channels. The sport wanted at least one hand on the wheel, so starting in 2001, they would change around their television package drastically, as moving forward, all negotiations for broadcasting rights would have to be made through them, and these negotiations would begin with NBC, Turner Sports, and Fox Sports. They each agreed to pay $2.4 billion for the exclusive right to show Cup Series racing on their accord, and it would be split in 2 halves, with Fox covering the opening half of the season, and NBC and Turner covering the second half. There have been a lot of provisions and shakeups since then, but for the most part, this is the arrangement we still see today. And for the longest time, it worked like a charm. We got different voices, different graphics, different cameras. It offered a sort of variety akin to stick and ball sports. But if you asked me to pick which one was the best, I have zero doubt in my mind. As a young fan who grew up in the 2000s and 2010s, there was none better at covering NASCAR racing than Fox Sports. Those who've seen my Voices of NASCAR video know just how much I love the three amigos, Joy, Waltrip, and McReynolds. But it was more than just the voices that made Fox the force that it was. It was that unmistakable guitar riff that welcomed you to each and every show. It was the electric atmosphere of 100,000 screams trying to drown out 32,000 horsepower. It was the vibrant and snappy graphics that only a sport like NASCAR could ever have. It was the advent of things like Crank It Up, the Grid Walk, and the drivers-only broadcast. But more than anything, it was the goosebumps I would get before every season and every race as DW would yell those magic words.
Boogity, boogity, boogity! Let's go racing, boys!
The races weren't always exciting, but Fox did a bang-up job making them seem that way. So much so that they've won 13 Emmys, but that stat is a double-edged sword, as it's now been over 10 years since they last won an award, even though they've been kicking ever since. So what happened? What became of the NASCAR on Fox we used to love? Around 2014, Fox decided to do something pretty bold with their graphics package. They made it boring. In the speed weeks leading up to the Daytona 500, they used a bland vertical ticker to display scoring. But after receiving enough backlash, they switched it back to horizontal. And after even more backlash, they would bring back the numbers in their respective colors and fonts. It's a small detail, but you have to understand, racing is the only sport with this many teams of this many colors and styles, and it's important to the fans that the graphics reflect that. So imagine the fan surprise when come 2018, just 4 years later, they pull up with what could very well be the blandest but ugliest graphics package we've ever seen, only characterized by its noticeable lack of character. You know how people hated the vertical ticker? Well, they're bringing it back with no explanation. And you know how we talked about the importance of using different colors? Fuck you, now they're come white and piss yellow. But somehow, some way, it still could have been worse. During speed weeks, the ticker wasn't even translucent. It was solid, soulless, spit-in-your-face gray. Just look at this. Someone was paid money to make this. And unlike the last ticker, they'd actually keep this one for 3 years. Sure, it might have been simple and easy to read, but looking back now, holy hell, what an eyesore. Thankfully, in 2021, they would bring back some of the color, but in 2022, they would revamp everything, as with the help of San Diego-based Drive Studio, NASCAR on Fox would get a complete makeover. Chances are you've seen something this company's made. From football to baseball to basketball and even Formula One, they've created a heavy majority of sports graphics we see here in the States. And in 2021, they had done something pretty interesting for the NFL. In addition to some spiffy new scoring overlays, they replaced photos of the players with digital drawings, making them look like they got plucked straight out of a graphic novel. Said Fox Sports' CEO, "We talk about these guys like they're superheroes, so instead of using straight-up photographs, maybe we use illustrations." The change received mixed reviews, but Fox was so jazzed about it that they decided to implement them into NASCAR as well. And oh boy, have they done just that. Now, to their credit, the graphics certainly are more lively than they used to be, but I mean, come on.
Look at the top of his head!
As for the other graphics, they'd be a lot better if they were, accurate. What car has 98 gears? But you know what their biggest problem has been as of late? I mean, it seems silly, since for the longest time it was their greatest strength. But goddammit, Fox does not know how to work a camera.
This is disgusting!
From stationary shots that don't show anything, to macro shots that show even less, to general ineptitude when it comes to when and where to cut, Fox just about does it all. Just watching the races gives you the sense that the people at the helm, so to speak, have never watched a NASCAR race, or any sporting event for that matter. And a good example of this was the end of the Richmond race just a few weeks ago. After a late caution that probably shouldn't have been a caution, the field is re-racked and restacked with 2 laps to go. You've got multiple cars with race-winning speed, all bunched together at the front, ready to duke it out on a track that's known for its late race dogfights. So you know that's what people are going to want to see. So what do? Zoom in on turn 4 as Denny Hamlin jumps the restart off camera. They missed one of the most egregious jumps in recent memory so that they could show us the cars racing for 30th. But wait, it gets even worse. After a war-torn Truex got bullied out of a surefire win, you know he's going to be hot. You know he's not going to take that sitting down. So what do they cut to? An 83-year-old Joe Gibbs struggling to climb over the pit wall. This is bad. They just fundamentally don't understand what people want to see. I know you can only expect to capture so much on live TV, but for this particular example, I was yelling, pleading with my TV to please show the leaders. But you know what Fox likes to cut to the most? Commercials. Yeah, they're a necessity for showing races on network TV, but it's gotten a little out of hand. During this year's Spring Talladega race, which had a 215-minute broadcast, 61 of those minutes were commercials. That's almost a third of the whole broadcast. Could you imagine if for every 2 minutes of my videos you had to watch a minute-long commercial? Unless YouTube really goes off the deep end or I get in some serious gambling debt, you shouldn't have to. And I think the same should be true for TV. Now, this next point is very much a nitpick, and I acknowledge that. But I just got my degree and I want to get some use out of it, damn it. I just graduated college with a bachelor's from film school, and one thing we learned about was logarithmic footage, essentially a flat but more detailed recording format, and one that can look really, really good if you shift the colors correctly. This is important because in 2023, Fox did not do that. If you thought the races last year looked a little bit grayer than normal, don't worry, you're not alone. Even on crystal clear sunny days, it looked like they were shooting through a fog bank, and on the days where there actually was fog, it was all the more jarring. I was worried about even bringing this up because, to my knowledge, nobody else has. but to prove my point, all I needed was this. 2 clips at the same track at the same time of day in similar weather conditions, but one is from Fox and the other is from NBC. I think you can guess which is which. An essential part of broadcasting is making the fans feel like they're really there, but when you cut away from key moments, stuff a stream of commercials down our throats, and make it look like we're constantly racing in the rain, it muddles the experience, and the experience has been muddled for too long now. But if you wanted to see my biggest indicator that Fox had fallen off, we have to go back to early 2022. It's the first ever clash at the Coliseum, an exhibition race held on a quarter-mile short track stuffed inside of the famed LA Memorial Coliseum. Just for comparison, the next smallest NASCAR tracks are more than double its size. Not having a camera on anything within this circuit should be a theoretical impossibility, but Fox doesn't care about the odds. With 35 to go, Eric Jones uses up Ryan Blaney and puts him in the wall, effectively ending his day. Frustrated by his car getting mangled for 7th place, Blaney jumps out of the car quickly, but instead of staying on him, we cut to an interview with Joey Logano's crew chief, which is fair. He's running in 2nd place and has a good shot to win. But then we head back down to the pits.
Well, we got some fireworks over here. Ryan Blaney just took off his Hans device, ran past me, and threw it at the 43.
They had footage of him before, they had footage of him after, they had footage of the thrown Hans device sitting on the ground. They had to have had at least one camera on the actual throw. Even Tony Stewart, serving as interim commentator, begs for a replay.
I just want to see the replay of the throw. I want to see if he had good leg extension and kick. I mean, like a helmet throw or something like that. Not that that's ever happened.
Yeah, wonder where that happened.
Unfortunately for Smoke, that replay would never come, as even on a track just slightly bigger than a football field, Fox completely missed it. And while some fan video has emerged, I have yet to see a video of the actual throw itself. If it really does exist, put a link in the comments below, but I seriously doubt it. A hallmark of short track Saturday nights is fights, tempers overflowing, bent fenders, and black eyes. It's not for everyone, but it's integral to the culture of racing, because boy does it draw a crowd. NASCAR knows this, which is why not only do they avoid intervening, but often use these scraps in their own promotions. Say what you will, but fights, arguments, and tempers are an essential part of what makes NASCAR, NASCAR, which is why to miss it, even a watered-down flyby example of it, is completely unacceptable. Imagine if they just didn't have a camera on Ross Chastain in Martinsville, or on pit road in Kansas when he punched Noah Gragson. Man, he's given us some gems. Or more accurately, imagine if they just didn't have a camera on Tony Stewart when he threw his helmet in Bristol, a track twice the size of LA. It would be sacrilege. But on this day, even when it should have been impossible for them to miss a single thing, NASCAR on Fox just found a way. They've gotten better about this over time, but I just couldn't let this example slip. It's just way too blatant. But buckle up, because that's just half the battle. Sure, the visuals could use some work, but when it comes to NASCAR, it's not just about what you see, but also what you hear. There's nothing quite like the sound of a NASCAR race, the roar of 30-plus engines put up next to the cheers of 50,000 fans. But if you watched on TV, you know that all it takes to drown out all of that noise is one singular voice. And for the past quarter century, that voice has been Mike Joy's. Now, I mean no disrespect toward Ken Squire, the man's a pioneer in broadcasting, and the sport wouldn't be what it is without him. But if you ask me, I would dub Joy as the voice of NASCAR. No other commentator has seen or spoken more than old Mike, and as the spokesperson of a sport so infatuated with nostalgia, he can both take us back in time whilst also carrying us into the future, a relic of the past and an icon in the present. I hope he stays in the booth for as long as he can, because even after 43 years on television, his voice continues to demand attention. But if he's gonna stay up there, we need to address his partners in crime. When I first heard that Clint Boyer would be joining the Fox booth, I was ecstatic. Not only would he be paired up with his best friend Jeff Gordon, but he could also add some much-needed comedic flavor in a post-Waltrip world. He was easily the funniest driver during his time in the Cup Series, which is why bringing in Boyer as a TV personality was a match made in heaven. Well, that's what I thought. Now it's 3 years later, and for the most part, those assumptions were correct. I think Boyer has brought some much-needed character back to the booth, and has also made for some great segments and great moments. So what's he missing?
AJ Allmendinger. Ooh, into the wall, hard.
He is not a play-by-play guy. He can diffuse tension like nobody else and make you laugh so hard you'll cry, but when it comes to commentating highlights, he serves as more of a detriment than a compliment. And then there's the new guy. Truth be told, I've loved hearing Kevin Harvick in the booth. He has the pragmatic reasoning of Jeff Gordon mixed with the banter of Tony Stewart and an ever-expanding vocabulary of Gen Z terminology.
All right, buddy. Well, that Columbia Camry, it looks pretty lit. Let him cook. He's got that dog in him. He's him. But no capping. Tyler Reddick yeeted Corey Hahn right out of the way right there.
Sure did. This is getting completely out of control with you, Kevin. You don't even know what yeeted is.
I don't know what yeet means.
What he lacks is something that can't really be taught, and the same goes for Boyer. They just don't have that chemistry yet. Great as Daryl, Larry, and Mike were, it took years of friendship and even more years of working together for them to find their mojo. And I think this new trio just has to do the same. The NBC booth might talk at about 500 hertz higher, but the reason they work well together? They're great friends, both in and out of the booth. Like their predecessors before them, the Fox guys all bring something to the table. They all have their own shticks, and they all know each other well. But cohesion comes with time. We just have to be patient. And if there's one thing NASCAR fans ain't, it's patient.
I want it now!
I know the narrative for the past couple of years has been Fox sucks, NASCAR is doomed, the world is ending, oh the humanity, etc., etc. But having reflected on their shortcomings, I think the sport is in a really good spot. I remember a time when everything, the tracks, the cars, the championship, the officiating, everything was under fire. So if our biggest problems are shoddy camera work and lacking commentary, I'd say we're doing just fine. But I do hope they rectify these problems. The look of a ticker or the sound of a voice might not mean much to the casual viewer, but for the fans that have stuck by through thick and thin, it means more than you might think. Attention to detail shows that you care, so I hope that Fox works on getting them right, because in 2025, they're going to have some new competition.
We are absolutely thrilled to be able to officially announce our new media partners.
Late last year, NASCAR representatives made a trip to Nashville, Tennessee to make an announcement, and it was a big one. Starting in 2025, they'll be handing off broadcast rights to 5 different partners, with Fox covering the opening 14 races, Amazon Prime carrying the next 5, then TNT taking over for the next 5, and lastly, NBC, as usual, will finish out the year with the final 14 races on the schedule. Fox will continue to be the exclusive home of the Truck Series, but starting with the final 8 races this year, the exclusive home of the Xfinity Series will be the CW. Whew, that's a lot to take in. For a sport that stayed planted in network TV for so long, this is an astronomical shift. And while many fans have expressed displeasure, I see this as a perfect storm. TNT already has some of the best sports coverage around, and Prime is the second largest streaming service in the world with 200 million members. And with Dale Earnhardt Jr. joining up with both of them, hopefully alongside Alan Bestwick, they're almost certain to make for some refreshing and probably nostalgic racing coverage. And with the new in-season tournament and an increase in viewership across the board, each network is sure to bring their A game next year. Now all we have to do is wait and see. In short, NASCAR broadcasts are not what they used to be. They're ugly, sloppy, downright messy at times, but the best parts still remain. The parts that take us back to a time when stock car racing was second to none. And with a new slew of partners ready to throw their Hans devices at Eric Jones, it's hard not to get excited. But that does mean we have to leave some parts in the past. Last week it was reported that Fox would be shutting down NASCAR Race Hub after 15 years, putting an end to an integral part of NASCAR's presence on network TV outside of the races themselves. For every race fan, this was a tough pill to swallow. Race Hub is our insider's look in the sport, and their radioactive segment has served as a huge draw for fans far and wide. But the truth is that the media landscape is an ever-changing place. We used to get our news on paper, then we got it on TV, and now we're getting it on our phones. Race Hub in its current state can't make it in the long run, but thankfully we just happen to join up with a network that specializes in sports shows. Maybe we'll see the return of Inside NASCAR? Also, I heard a certain other TNT show might be getting canned soon and their hosts are going to be out of a job, so TNT, please give us a talk show with Dale Jr. and Charles Barkley. It's what the people deserve.
Number one, welcome to heaven.
So yeah, are things perfect the way they are? Hell no, but NASCAR knows this, and just as they've done with most of their other imperfections in recent years, they're tinkering, trying to find a fix. I doubt the transition will be squeaky clean, but with all of these changes and tons of newfound interest, it's hard not to get excited for what awaits us next year. Anyways, that's about all the TV talk my brain can handle. Let me know what you think of the new deal in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.